All right. Thank you for joining me today. This is Todd Hendricks with the illustrious Reverend Joe Lane.
Hi, Todd.
Hi, Joe. This is going to be a fun one. And those of you who don't know, Joe and I go way, way back. And
Cracker Jacks.
yes, yes. So Joe was a longtime mentor of mine. I went to the church where Joe was senior pastor. And then this is also the church where I was associate pastor for 7 years.
I'm not
So,
going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm not doing that, Joe. I'm not doing that. And then I did it. So, beside being Reverend Joe Lane has also been an administrator in a public school system and is currently the community engagement specialist for Reese Buffer Public Schools in the Muskegon area. So, Joe, we're going to talk all things leadership, and we're not going to just stick with church leadership or school leadership. We're just going to talk leadership in general. And the first question that I would like you to answer is, who is one of your mentors in leadership that you can name and that has probably had the biggest impact on you as a leader?
Yeah. So obviously, it would be Tom Jones. I think
The
when I
singer?
talk about it's not
I'm sorry.
unusual. No, you know who I'm talking about.
I've heard the name, yes.
Yeah,
I've
I
not
was
met
gonna
him.
say if you haven't heard the name and we've been friends that long, then I've
Right,
done
yeah.
something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, my high school band director.
That's
Um,
right, yes.
yeah. So I would say that Dan Beckman is probably the greatest leader I've ever watched. He's our former high school principal, and Dan is just a consummate leader in everything. He pastors people in the definition of that word
Mm,
and how he leads people. But Tom, I just watched him when I was a young man, 14 years old until now. Um, Watched him lead very quietly and very strategically, do some things to build young people into becoming their best self. And, sometimes he did that in a very gentle way. With me, most of the time, he did it in a very direct and pointed way. Um, he is the only human being that gets to call me by Joseph, which isn't even my name. Um,
right.
but I love that man.
Yeah,
The only man I love more than him is my father, and
yeah.
my dad is my dad. But Tom is just been really. He was just good for me. He said the things that I needed to hear when I needed to hear them, and yeah, I mean, there's not a lot that I can't say about him. I mean, if you put it in context, he's my high school band director, and he was in my wedding.
Right. Yes. And I was going to say, now that you've, connected those dots for me, the stories that I've heard you tell about him, you maintained contact with him long after high school. He was in your wedding.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
it-
I talked to him a month ago. I mean,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I was in. Yeah, he was in my wedding. I was actually in his wedding. Um, I am his oldest son's godfather.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, Tom and I are. It's a wild, wild relationship, but it also speaks to what we can become to people when we allow ourselves to become whatever we can for people.
Yes. Yes. And so many times, just throughout our relationship together, I remember you talking about students that you were mentoring or talking with or just dealing with as an assistant principal when you were in that role. And you would say, Tom did this and that influenced how I handled this situation.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And that was both like strong and soft. Like I just watched him navigate people the way he met them where they were
Hmm.
and took them where they needed to go, including me. I mean, there's no way in the world I would be doing the things. I call him every year before school starts and just say thank you and remember what you did for me. And I'm sitting in this seat because of who you were to me. And then I
Yeah.
call him on Father's Day also. I call him
Yeah.
every Father's Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an
So
amazing relationship. Has he ever, I guess, reciprocated what that means to him back to you? Has he verbalized that to you?
he has like he's Tom's not an emotional dude. So he doesn't bring that out. But like when he retired, one of my classmates had called me and they're like, "Hey Joe, we're throwing a retirement party for Mr. Jones." I was like, "No, you're not. I am. I've already talked to his wife, so you can get on my train, but you're not doing it. I'm doing it. Y'all, who do y'all think y'all are?" Like I
Right.
was legitimately offended. I was like, "No, you're Debbie, if you'd like to join in, but I'm
Right.
doing it."
Yeah.
So, but at that party, we surprised him. He actually thought he was coming to a gig to play with me because he's a saxophonist. So I hired him for this gig, and the gig was in Lansing. And I was like, "Yeah, man, they told me I could hire whoever I want, so I want you to play saxophone." So he came to the gig carrying his horn, and all of his students are there. There's like 120 people there. With his mom and his wife and his family, and he walks in with his horn, and we actually did play. I mean, because that's what he
Right.
loves to do. But he was like, "You turkey." But yeah, so he talked about it that day. But this summer, I was in Lansing visiting my dad, and there was an ice cream social, and Tom was playing at it, and he was like, "Hey, you want to sit in?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll play." And then he
You
announced,
posted that. I think I saw that, didn't I?
"Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah."
Yes.
But he announced me as his adopted son,
Oh,
right? And
dang, Joe, we're
I
not
don't think,
supposed to cry on the podcast.
and I don't think he had ever said that before. I was like, "Oh, he just for real." Yeah,
Yes.
but no, like I'll say stuff, and he'll be like, "Yeah, brother." He always calls me brother. He's like, "No, man, you keep doing what you're doing." And he'll text me every once in a while and tell me he's proud of me. And like, no, he's definitely reciprocated that verbiage.
Yes.
So
So let's give a little context for the audience because I do have a wide range. My mom's going to love watching this because she watches all night and she loves
hi,
you.
mom.
And then some of my daughter's friends in high school watch these as well because I've had some videos and talking about things that they've asked about. What's up, fellas? Yeah. But for those who don't know you, aside from Pastor Joe, Reverend Joe, and high school administration Joe, and middle school teacher, and all that, jazz drummer, accomplished jazz drummer.
And I'm Mia and Adrikin's uncle.
That's right, Uncle Joe. That's right.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I've played music my whole life. That's really what saved me and kept me out of a whole lot of other stuff.
Yes.
And then, I mean, the story is long, but I kind of came from a crazy background where my parents worked a lot and I was at home alone. And so one of the things I did was play music to keep myself occupied and feeling like I wasn't scared to be at home alone. And I did that when I was young. I'm talking like 8 years old.
Yeah.
But I played every day. And so grew up, played, became pretty decent. By the time I was out of high school, I was a really good musician. And so then I went away to college and I studied at Oberlin Conservatory and went there. And
those of you who know that name, know that name. Those of you who don't, look it up.
If you know, you know. I don't ever even like now. I just say I studied at Oberlin Conservatory, and if people don't say anything, I just keep moving. And if they know, they're like, "Oh, really?"
And let me finish the sentence for you. The first jazz drum major.
Yes,
at
I was
Oberlin.
the first. I was the first jazz drum major at Oberlin Conservatory ever. It would have been even nicer if I would have finished there, but I didn't.
Right.
Couldn't afford that joint.
Everybody transfers. Come on, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I was in the portal.
Yeah.
No, and so then ended up, but I ended up going to Michigan State and playing a lot there. Did a lot of recording, did a lot of traveling. But I mean, there was a point in my life when I was so like to say that I was a musician is one thing, but to say this line, I think brings value to the level of musicianship I had, that I was a full-time musician where I did nothing else for work for over 2 years.
Right.
So I made him.
And then I'll give you the plug that makes you famous. He opened for Madonna.
Yeah. So let me tell the story right. I was going to go on tour to play drums for Madonna's opening act in Europe. And then I fell in love and did not go. So
still married.
I'm still very married. Bro. Okay.
Yep. I mean, this finger, that's the finger I was trying to show. The third finger.
After we stop recording. I love you, honey.
Yes. Yeah, Joe loves his wife. Yes, he does.
More than anything but Jesus.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, so I mean, really, music allowed me the platform to go to school. It allowed me the platform to learn a lot about leadership. I mean, I was a band leader, and I was, we talk about leadership, just trying to bring us back.
Right. Thank you for keeping me on track.
Well, me too, right?
Two ADD people having a conversation.
From the time I was 14, though, I was put in leadership positions. So I was the section leader of our marching band, drumline, when I was 16. But when I was 14, I was like the second best drummer, maybe, in the drumline, or at least I thought I was. And so I was put in a situation where I was leading my section of bass drummers and then helping do that. And Mr. Jones just kept giving me responsibility. And the choir teacher next door, who's the one who led me to the Lord, she kept giving me responsibility. And just they were doing things to pour leadership stuff into me. And I didn't even realize what they were setting me up for.
Remind me of, because I think I have the connection here. What is her name? The choir teacher?
Yeah, Verna Holly.
Melvin Holly's wife.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just talked to them about 2 weeks ago. They were I met a lady at a educational conference in Chicago who's related to them, and
Oh,
then
that's crazy.
she was like, "I'm going to see them next weekend." So she called and put me on FaceTime with them. They were like, "Why you need to come visit us next time you're in town?" So that's
Yes.
kind of cool.
Another one of Joe Lane's superpowers for the audience is Joe Lane can go anywhere in the country and find somebody that he knows.
So
Remember,
Todd,
you and I drove to New York to buy a car for my parents. We stopped at the
yeah,
rest stop in Ohio.
forgot about that.
And the joke was, Joe, we're going to walk in here and you're going to know somebody. And you were like, whatever, we're in the middle of Ohio. We walk in and who did you see? Somebody from your frat from
Yeah,
college,
I
like 20
forgot
years
about
ago.
that.
And I'm like, oh
I
my
forgot
God.
about that.
And I just laughed at you. Like, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll see you when I get
Yeah.
out.
So I used to poo-poo that and I used to play it down. I don't anymore. Like
No?
I don't sound boastful, but it happens everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's that I know a lot of people. I think I've just been in, well, I do know a lot of people, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been involved in so many variances of things.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you talk about music or ministry or education, I mean, those are wide tentacles, right?
Yes.
And so, and then having been at a couple different schools and played in a lot of, so like the jazz world, you know, you're playing with all these different musicians. And so when you're connected that broadly in that many areas, it just happens to be what it is.
Yes.
So,
And then I think another part of your leadership ties in with the music, ties in with the school, is you have now, I would probably assume that you have amassed tens of thousands of personal connections with students over your long career in education. And so now these students are no longer students, they're adults having kids and families of their own. And now they're kind of on a different level, but you run into people there. And I think, you know, from what I've heard you talk about over the years of our friendship, of going back to Tom Jones, sewing into you as a student, that is, if I could say, aside from the drumming and the music, your superpower is your ability to connect with people, specifically students. You have, like, that is something that I have learned from you in. So when I was early on in my teaching career, I would listen to you and be like, oh, wow, that's what I want to emulate. So those of you who know me in an educational sense from my educational career, a lot of my leadership and connection abilities and things that at the end of my career, I really specialized in student engagement. Thank you, Joe Lane.
Well, that's cool. And I mean, I think that leadership is relationships. So like you don't follow somebody you don't love, or you don't follow somebody that you don't respect, at least, right? And so all of that stuff draws into that. And I think the thing it is with kids, I just keep it 100 with them. And so they're like, Mr. Lane's not blowing smoke. He's going to be real with us. He's going to be fair with us. He's going to hold us accountable. You know, kids want what's right. I'll tell you one day a funny story that we had. Applegeddon is what I like to call it at school the other week. I was filling in because I don't do administration anymore, really. Right. Like I'm not a assistant principal anymore, but I was filling in for the assistant principal for a couple of days.
Right. And
so I had to put that hat back on, and when it still fits. That's all I'll say.
Yep. So every once in a while, Adri, like we'll go to like a football game or something, and somebody will be cutting up or messing up, and Adri will be like, "Can you please not do your assistant principal voice right now, Dad?" Because it is right there. I think we were assistant principals for a couple years right at the same time. I think when I was getting into that role, you were starting to exit out of that role.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you and I think had a lot of the same approach. And like, I would talk to my teachers who would struggle with a student who like cutting up in their classroom. And I'd be like, wow, that's interesting because they're getting straight A's in this class over here, but they're failing your class, but they're really good at math. So,
they don't like you.
Exactly. And those were conversations that people didn't want to have, but if you can fix the relationship.
People will give up a lot to prove to you that you don't have power over them.
Yes.
Right. So I would always say, man, a kid will take a 3-day suspension in a heartbeat to show you that you can't just tell them what they're going to do.
Oh, absolutely.
About 3 days out of school or whatever. So let's talk about, I remember vividly a kid said, look, Mr. Lane, on you. And he was a fighter. Like he just liked to fight. He liked to fight, like enjoyed it, not just fought. He just enjoyed fighting. Enjoyed fighting. And if he ever watches this, he knows exactly who I'm talking about. But he said,
let's tag him on Facebook.
Right. But he said to me, he goes, "Look, Mr. Lane, on you, I will never hit another kid in this building."
Hmm.
And I was like, "All right." And about a few months later, like a kid came into his room. He was picking on the kid, but a kid came into his room, a big old boy, and walked up to him. And this kid was like not a big kid. Like he's like 5'8", 165 pounds, but he could throw hands. Yeah. 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 Might have been a little thicker than you. But no, but he could throw. I mean, like he could fight.
Yeah.
Nobody, he was in a fight. He was in a fight club.
Yeah.
But this boy was like 6'4", 330. And he
Yeah.
came in and just started wailing on him. And the kid tucked, ducked, and covered.
Mm.
And I was like, "Hey man." So we came down to the office and he said, "I told you I was never hit another kid in this building, and I didn't."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's
the power of a relationship right there.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And honestly, Todd, so I pastor church, right? And I don't take that lightly.
He's in it right now. Look behind him, guys.
Yeah. That's a 120-year-old stained glass right there. Yep. I don't take it lightly that I pastor church, but I also think about this. Like, I'm at the school doing leadership. I'm at different places doing leadership. I'm like, don't take this the wrong way, but I run a business, right? The church isn't a business, but there's business aspects of the church.
Correct.
It has a budget, yada, yada, yada. And I said, so put this in context. So there's 180 churches the last time I counted in Muskegon. People choose to come, and not a lot, 70 people, let's say, whatever, choose to come here every Sunday. They choose to give their money freely every Sunday. They choose to do different things and volunteer different things and show up and do all of this stuff really for free. And I know it's about Jesus, but really they could do that anywhere. They choose to come to this particular place. That has to do with culture. And culture is a direct reflection of leadership.
Yes. Yep. And they're probably passing other churches on the way to New Life.
Yeah. We have one family that drives from Grand Rapids every Sunday.
Really? That's
every Sunday. And the interesting thing about that family, I love them. I love them. They're the wife is a pastor's kid who experienced their whole family experienced a lot of church hurt when their dad died. And they got a new pastor at the church, and they just went through that whole thing. Right. And they have said to me, "We are grateful for the way you care for us."
Yeah, that's something I kind of picked a fight with somebody about that a couple months ago, about that term church hurt. Cause I was like, I don't buy into church hurt. And they were like, "Oh, what? You don't believe in church hurt?" And I was like, "No, that's person hurt." Cause churches can't really hurt you, but the people within the churches sure as heck can. And it's kind of like, I was talking to this person and they were like, "That's why I don't go to a church. I can be spiritual on my own." And sure. Okay, fine. Let's take that. But just because you have a bad meal at a restaurant doesn't mean you stop going to all restaurants.
100%. 100%. And I think the reason that we use the phrase church hurt is because people look at church with a lot less grace than they look at a restaurant.
Oh, absolutely.
So if a church hurt me, or if a person in a church hurt me, then I don't have to go to any of them.
Right. That's their crutch or their excuse to not go.
Yeah, we don't do the same thing with food poisoning. So
absolutely not.
Yeah. Somebody just came in for Bible study. So just if you hear me yell at somebody, just know that.
Yep. Absolutely. Because I know how you roll. So let's move into let's get out of the church leadership mindset a little bit. Go into the school administrator leadership, because that is another area that I have learned tremendously from you. A lot of things that you have implemented in your assistant principal role and other administrative roles that you've done at Reese Puffer have just like you and I have talked about that stuff so much, and I've learned so much from you and implemented those things. What is one of the key things as a school administrator when you are specifically dealing with managing people? And I don't mean kids, I mean adults, managing staff.
No, for sure. I think first of all, it's honesty and transparency, right? So like and integrity. I'm gonna say what I must do, and I'm gonna do what I say I'm gonna do. And if I don't think I can do it, I'm gonna be honest about that. you
Yes.
know. And not to this isn't a political statement, but one of the things that I think is funny about every election, and since we just had an election yesterday, which is kind of funny, right? Is when a person says, "Well, when I'm elected, we can talk about being elected for a school board or not just presidency, yes, whatever. But when I'm elected, I'm going to." You can't say that. Like you can't make that promise to people,
right?
Because none of us have the ability to carry that out. So what I've tried to learn to say is, this is what I want to do. And if I have the ability to do it, I'm going to. And I'm going to do as much as I can to help us get there. Or this is what I believe. And I am so sold on this that this is why I'm going this way. But I think communication is critical, because what I've learned, and I mean, I've been doing this a long time, right? So my first gig at school administration was 2002, I think. I learned, and I was young and stupid, so that helped me learn a lot of things. But as long as people realize that you have the best interest in mind, and you're communicative about that, they're going to give you a lot of grace.
Yes.
And then you grow together. It's when you don't tell people, or they don't think that you have their best interest in mind, or the best interest of the organization, that's when they start challenging you.
Yes.
So let me see if I can say it this way. I believe that people hold you accountable to the level that they feel like you care about the investment. And
I've heard that.
And when they don't, either they don't think you care about them, or they don't think you care about the organization, or whatever, they start to actually hold you to a higher standard. And then the critique of you is greater.
Yes.
And so now I am not doing whatever somebody wants me to do, and they don't think that I'm really, riding for them. So now I have a root canal and I have to be out for a day. And they're like, see, he doesn't come to work. They start to hold those things. And, I remember times when I'm like, man, I need to run home and check so-and-so. They're like, just go, Joe. And I'm like, well, I don't want to. Joe, just go home. Like, because they knew how invested I was in them and in the organization. But if they didn't feel that from me.
Yeah. There's an old saying that says, we judge ourselves based on our intentions and others on their actions.
100%.
And it's like, there's a company downtown Grand Rapids that I do business with sometimes on the real estate side of things. And they have as their company motto for interactions. You're familiar with social contracts in schools and capturing kids' hearts and all that stuff. Their social contract at their company is always assume good intent. And if something comes across as not good intent, ask.
That's beautiful.
And I was like, that's amazing. That's simple, to the point, and gives transparency.
And the interesting thing about that is when you build right relationships with people, they start to do that, right? Yes. Or they're like, Joe, this wouldn't be a normal thing for you. Can I ask you about that? Because I think the other thing for leaders is we have to give. So I knew when we were talking, I was going to use this word. So I got to make sure I use it right now. And the word is intentional. That is my word for the year. It's the word and it's actually our church theme is step into it, intentional transformation. Like, so you can have this phrase. I'm going to give this to you. I have a trademark, so I'm going to say it.
No, because I got two words at our church that I'm using: purposeful and intentional. Isn't that funny?
So here's my quote: do the right thing on purpose, or you might do the wrong thing on accident. Yeah, I'm for real. That's mine. I'm
making a reel out of that.
Yeah, no, at 100%.
Yes.
Do the right thing on purpose, or you might do the wrong thing on accident. So we have to be intentional about those things. And what I was going to say was, so we'd like to say, oh, well, I'm approachable, I'm an open door, or you can talk to me. Not if I can't talk to you.
Right.
Or not if I don't feel like I can talk to you.
Right.
So just kind of as an illustration to that, that's in my older age. I talk in illustrations a lot now. One of the kids that was in that Applegeddon situation, right? Stellar kid, never been in trouble in her entire school career. Now she's in 7th grade, and the acting assistant principal is on a terror mission, right? So I'm like, you got till the end of second hour to self-report if you threw apples in this commons area. If you don't, I'm going to watch the cameras, and the consequences are going to be greater if you don't self-report. So I was trying to get the kids to use some integrity. So I had a bunch of kids, like 22 kids, were like, "Yeah, I threw an apple," right? And it was just these little apple packets. It wasn't even that big of a deal. But the mom of this girl comes to me and says, "I need to talk to you." It's like, okay. And so she shared with me that she didn't feel good about my approach because of her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, this conversation is amazing. Like, you felt comfortable enough to come tell me that you didn't like what I did.
Mm.
When we get to that place in leadership, because let's be honest, like, if you're in leadership, you think that the people that you're leading can say things to you, you're wrong.
Right.
You know, I'm a pastor, and people don't tell me what they really think most of the time, you know. So you've got to create space where you give people not only permission, but you dig it out of them. You know?
Yes. Yeah. And I think sometimes not even only creating the space, but giving the prompt.
Yeah. So like to say, listen, and I mean, I've done this even when you were here at church. Like, I'll be like, all right, so talk to me about something we could have done better today. I'm not. I mean, look, man, I'll go to one of the
that acoustic
schools.
guitar player sucks.
Well, but I'll go to the elementary school and let, second graders hug me and tell me how cool I am. That's fine. I get enough of that. But if I'm going to grow and be better, you gotta show me my growth edges. You got to show me the places where, and I've got to ask for those. I've got to look for those. I've got to listen.
Yes.
And then every single time I do that, and here I think is even maybe the largest piece. Now that I've said it, now that I've asked for it, now that we put that out there, every person that's giving me that feedback is going to look to see if there's anything different.
Yes. And if you put it out there, you as Johnny on the spot better take it when it comes.
Yeah. So one more short story about that. So a couple years ago, I had a teacher, and you're talking about CKH, and I'm the PBIS coach, for a lack of a better term, in our district too. Right. So I'm always about positive behaviors and stuff. Yep. And so after I had a teacher that I used to joke with all the time. We were in a staff meeting at this one particular building, and I was joking with them at the staff meeting, and I said something, and I left early, and they came out in the hallway. They were like, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And they're like, "You hurt me. Like, you talk about being kind and saying nice things to kids all the time, and you just were really not nice to me." And I'm like, oh my gosh, like totally nothing I would not have done any other time.
Right.
And then I said, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And I am going to work to fix it. That was it. Right. Mm-hmm. No. Oh, I was just joking. Like, right. Really? That's what you're going to respond with? I just apologized. About a month later, I went to that person. I said, hey, can I talk to you for a second? She was like, I am so sorry about that day. I was like, no, don't apologize. I just need to know if I'm doing better.
Mm.
And she was like, yes, you are. And I said, that will never happen again.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of powerful things in that story that you just related. I think the first powerful thing was that your response to the critique was not defensiveness. It was 1,000%. Ownership.
Yes.
You owned it. So that right there built capacity with that staff member. Mm-hmm. And then because you've done that, now you can have a follow-up conversation a month later. And it's like, now her guard is down.
Yeah. Perspective is reality. If Marissa came to you and said, Todd, I just don't think that you come in the house early enough. You can say whatever you want about her early. You think you come in. She just told you what she thought. She just told you what she felt. And so the moment that you're like, well, the reason I don't is because I'm not trying to hear that. I'm trying to clean the yard for you. I'm not trying to hear that. I told you don't come in early enough.
Right.
And so I hear you. Let me see what I can do about that. And then the response might be later. So I've been working on the yard at that time. I don't know how I can fix that. Do you have an option of how I can do that? Yes. She might even say, I don't care about the yard. Come in the house.
Right. Right.
Or whatever. But we just don't have those dialogues and those conversations. And I don't think leaders allow people enough permission to speak transparently into them.
Yeah. And I think I like that piece, and I want to take it a step further. I think we as leaders, especially in the day and age of uh being offended and being canceled and all of that stuff that's going on, when you can just say something and then be done with somebody forever, where in real life, no, you can't
Right.
just be done with somebody. So as leaders, can we ask the appropriate follow-up questions to ensure the betterment happens?
Yes. So I would ask any leader though, why is it that you don't want people to tell you something that you don't want to hear?
Right. That's a
I mean,
fascinating conversation.
oh, dude, and I've been digging in. I've been digging in. So here's another thought. I'm closer to the casket than the crib, right? Oh,
When did you
there's a
preach that one?
oh, trust me, new lifers have heard that a lot, right? I mean, I'm 52 years old. You can see my belly and stuff. I'm not gonna be 104, right? So there's a level of urgency about how I live, and
Mm,
and not like I got to get it all done right now, but I'm going to be purposeful and strategic about everything that I do.
yes.
And so
Intentional.
intentional. And so why is it that I wouldn't want to hear if I'm leading with someone, if I'm leading somebody, or if I'm even in relationship with somebody, why is it that I wouldn't want to hear something that they feel just because I don't want to hear it?
Right.
At that moment, I have severed the level of growth of the relationship to
Right.
whatever that is.
Yeah. And I think going back to your comment about perspective as reality. So I've had some conversations about perspective and reality, and then truth and what is
Sure.
truth.
Yep.
And sometimes a person's perspective is their reality, but it is not their truth. And then
Right.
as leaders, how do we have the conversation of seeking truth in a loving way that then
Mhm.
guides them? Because sometimes as leaders, oftentimes we have the full scope of a situation that's going on or whatever, and
Right.
sometimes the people that we're leading don't have that. So how can we lead them from a place that they are to the place that they need to be but don't know that they need to be?
Yeah. Through understanding where they are.
Yeah. And
And
asking the right questions and digging in
yeah.
and having those conversations.
Well, and usually that's the problem. Like they give us their truth or their reality, and we're like, oh, you know what? I forgot. You didn't even realize that the reason that we can't have that meeting on Tuesdays is because the gym is being used, or the reason we
Right.
can't do that is because this. There are pieces you don't know. I also would like to submit, and I'm just in this headspace right now where I'm a wide open person. Like beat me up so I can be better. That we as leaders don't always know the whole story either,
Fair.
right? And
Fair.
so we think we do because we're the leader and we're supposed to. And then somebody's like, "But Joe, I mean, I don't want to say too much about, and this isn't about school, but like there was a situation where I was leading some music in a situation, and they changed the whole dynamic, and I'm like, why did y'all do that? And they're like, well, we didn't have enough space. You didn't ask me. I was the one doing it, and if you would have asked me, this was an easy fix.
Right. Right.
And so now there's 40 people who don't get the benefit of enjoying this certain situation because no one asked the question, because
Right.
leadership wasn't interested in knowing the answer.
That's another good point. Is
And
leadership interested in knowing the right answer? Because sometimes
and
they're not. They just want to do the thing.
categorically, Todd, I just pounded on this table. Categorically, I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So
But
so
that's what
and
separates the good leaders from
yes,
the
from
rest.
great leaders. And I think that so you just got me in all these headspaces, man. So I think that there's levels of thinking through too, right? So I might say, yeah, I asked the question, but what about the question to the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about the why that comes after that? Because I think we were in a meeting and our superintendent was talking about being strategic versus being dramatic. And I said, so he was like, we can be strategic about things, but if we're dramatic about things, we're just throwing them together and we're doing them. I said, but I think that sometimes we think we're being strategic and we're just being dramatic.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
if I said, "Hey, we're gonna build like your sign behind you," right? Yeah, that one. It has meaning to it, right? And the meaning, there's strategy behind that. You could have just had the PF and the blue background. And then if you want somebody to go somewhere, I don't actually know because we've not talked about your logo. But I'm seeing direction.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, there's an orange arrow that's not the same color as the two white ones.
Mm-hmm.
There's strategy in that takes you deeper to a place than just doing something to say you did it so that you can move past it and get on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times leaders say, well, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm gonna do an empathy interview, or I'm gonna say, well, Todd, how are you doing today? I don't want to know the answer. Or hey,
You're just checking a
think
box.
Yeah, how do you think I did Sunday? Or how do you think I did at that meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you were good. Yeah, that's different than saying, hey, Todd, talk to me about the meeting. What's one place that you feel like we could have done better?
Right. Yeah. And I think also knowing the people you can ask that question to. Because some people, even if you give them the space, won't answer you honestly.
Yes. So I think, so you said the people you can, I would add and should.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, I think to your point, there are some people that won't answer honestly. And those are the people that I go after. Like, I'm going to keep working on you until you know that I'm safe enough for you to tell me for real.
Right.
Because usually the only reason that people won't tell you is because they don't think you're safe enough to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, why else? If you're my friend, and Todd, you and I have had some honest conversations about things, right? I mean, but
there was a time you wanted to beat me up.
Yeah. I actually told that story not too long ago.
Okay.
And let's be honest.
You did spank me in the snowbank.
I did spank you. That was funny. Now everybody on here is going to be like, "What was that about?"
Yeah, that's the video that's going to go viral.
but because of our relationship and intimacy and honesty with one another,
mm-hmm.
Even when I was, I guess, your leader,
mm-hmm.
you knew. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, how transparent can we be on here?
Very.
All right. So who's the person who used to call me regularly and ask me about my porn addiction?
I don't want to say names.
It was you. I mean, you would call me out of nowhere and not say, you'd be like, hey, just checking on you. When's the last time you looked at porn? Like, I mean, like that direct, right?
Well, and you asked me to.
But that's my point.
Yes.
Like, I didn't say, hey, man, no, I was like, listen, this is what I'm giving you. I'm asking
mm-hmm.
you even to do. I'm giving you permission to do, because you were doing that long after that invitation.
Mm.
And that's because you cared about me, you cared about the church, you cared about yada, yada, yada. And that was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there were times when you would listen to me speak, and based on how I was speaking and whether I was sounding too arrogant or whatever, you'd be like, okay, because there are also telltale signs with leaders. We do things that are that take us out of our sweet spot, right? And so if I'm being too overly arrogant, then I'm really not being in that sweet spot of leadership. I've got some other stuff that's kind of clouding my ability to lead well or do whatever. And so I think you would hear that, and whether it was you consciously or subconsciously or the Lord, whatever, you were like, hey, let me check on him because he's not in his zone.
Yes. And for transparency, you did a great job with that problem. And
yeah, I've been sober for years. But
yes. And when I would sense those things and see those things in you, honestly, it was your schedule.
Yeah. I remember
it was your schedule that was killing you. And I'd be like, dude, you've got to stop something, cut something out, quit volunteering for something.
And as a person who I was leading, you could say those things. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, I don't ever want to be in a headspace where people are like, Joe is so-and-so, but I don't want to tell. Man, I got to get out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at that point, I am not leading people. I am in a leadership position.
Right. And then there were the times where you would bring that right back at my face. Like, hey, Todd, let's talk about something. Oh.
But listen, but how much easier was it for me to take permission when you were talking to, is it Amina? Am I saying her name correct?
Yes, Amina Moyes.
Yeah.
My
when
last
you were
interview.
Talking to her, huh?
My last interview.
Okay. When you were talking to her, there were a couple of things that she said It made me think, how much easier is it for me? Oh, the question that you asked her was, well, are there times when you've had to actually just say, well, this is how it's going to be, right? How much easier is it for me to step into those moments if I ever have to go there, if I've already given you the platform to speak into me?
Yep.
Yeah, man. I mean, and we're not living in the same generation that we lived in 20 years ago, man. Like kids and even the adults right now. So you were talking about my students. I am now have students who, their parents were my kids, right? So I'm in that second generation of teaching or leading people. But they don't care anything about me being a leader. They care about me being a leader with integrity and me being a leader that's really doing the right thing and being a person that they can do life with and rock with. And and so I love that. Like I love the fact that people are like, hey, can I talk to you? I didn't like this, or I'm challenging this. Even last Sunday, Pastor Appreciation Month, some and I don't want to say this negatively, but like it wasn't leadership. It was like just congregants like decided that I wasn't preaching last Sunday, not 2 weeks ago. And they took over the service. Like they were like, this is what's going to happen next Sunday. You don't have anything to say about it. And I was telling the church this last week. I was like, what church does that happen where the pastor,
right?
Like people can just unilaterally like, yeah, you're just going to sit down and not do anything this week.
Yeah, but they were loving on you.
But that's my point. Yes, 100%. Yes, 100%. Yeah. And they love me well.
They didn't say, sit down, you're not coming back.
No. But for them to even do that also speaks to the level of leadership. Like they love me enough to step in and do that.
Yes. And then I want to give you kudos, Joe, because the way that you lead, I've seen you wash the feet of the people of that church.
Literally.
Like toenails, barefoot, in the water with a washcloth on your hands and knees, washing the feet of the people of the church. And that's been a common theme with a lot of the interviews that I've done, is that servant leadership.
Well, here's the deal.
You carry that into your school stuff too.
Yeah, here's the deal. So who I am is who I am, right? And whether we're talking about church leadership or school leadership, I mean, I'm a Christ follower, and this isn't a proselatory statement. If I'm a football player, there's certain things that I do, there's certain ways that I act. If I'm a military guy, there's certain things that I do and certain ways that I act. I happen to be a Christian, so there's certain things that I should do and ways that I act. And so all of that has nothing to do with anything except for that I'm trying to be like I'm supposed to be.
Yes.
Right. Yep. And so if I'm not going to do that, then I'm really being hypocritical in all of that.
Yeah.
And I just think my model is good. So I watch and read about him and I just try to make connections to that.
Yeah, his book's at every store I've ever been to. So.
Bestseller.
Yeah, bestseller, multiple languages. And I had that conversation with a friend of mine who is a business owner and business leader. And he comes up against people who, will espouse their faith, whatever their faith is, about how good of a Christian they are, or how good of a Catholic they are, or, all this stuff. And then when a hard decision is made or something that goes negative, they'll say, well, that's just business. And his response is, you're the same person on Sunday as you are on Monday morning. And that needs to be consistent. If it's not consistent, then there's some duplicity there.
So let me see if I can make this sound deep, right? You're the same person you are on Sunday as you are on Monday, or you're the same person you are on Monday as you are on Sunday.
Yes.
and that's the scary part.
Yep.
Right.
What's the old saying that you used to say about Saturday night and Sunday morning? There was something you used to say. Oh gosh. Something about being in the club Saturday night, being at church Sunday morning, or something like that. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. And so, I mean, that duplicity is really not duplicity. Really what it is you're faking one of those, and it's probably the one that's the best.
Yeah. Because we're all self-serving in some way, shape, or form. And we want the thing that's going to be best for us. And that's where I think we struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So putting people around you, I think here's another leadership, capstone, putting people around you that have permission and responsibility to checks and balances.
Yep.
So not just permission, but responsibility. If I say, Todd, you're responsible to make sure that I'm being humble. You're
Hmm.
responsible to make sure that I'm being transparent. You're responsible to make sure that I'm using integrity. Then it's not just, you don't just say, well, I'm not going to say it because Joe isn't going to like it. No, that's part of your relationship to our covenant, to our friendship.
Yes. Yeah. And
That's
I
your
think that's something
responsibility.
that people have really kind of, I won't say lost, but it is such a fast paced world right now.
Sure.
And it's just like, it always seems like the end result is the only goal. And as long as we get to that end result, who cares what the process is?
Yeah,
And I think guys like you and me are like, no, the secret sauce is the journey to the goal.
man. Yeah, because once you get there, if I get when we were taking, going to get that car, if we would have got all the way to New York City but forgot the title, right? So
Crap.
so what? That the goal was getting to the car. The goal wasn't getting to the car. The goal was getting to the car with everything that we should have with it. And
Yes.
why would I forget something? Or why would I miss something? So that journey on the way as a leader is growing me each stop or each moment. And I'm learning something from that. I was at work today, man. I learned, I don't know, a bunch of things, from
Mm,
students and from staff. Because I'm paying attention to those opportunities because I don't know it all and I
yeah.
can't know it all. And I want to be a little bit better. And even in
Yeah.
doing that, it's showing people their value to me.
Yes. And I'm going through the same thing, with the people first coaching and consulting business that I launched last year. And, as launching a business, I know you've done that with your photography stuff, amongst other things. Joe is a phenomenal photographer. So if you need senior pictures, contact Joe.
I shoot
Um,
people.
that means something different when it comes from me. but it,
That's why I said
but
it.
but like understanding the process, and I'm going to use a Bible verse, but I think it applies to all of life. Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purposes. So even the
100%.
negative will Joe, you've preached so many sermons from your personal life that I've heard of negative things that happened in your life that were later used to give some transformational ministry, or, be the one thing that got that person past this thing. And it's like, yeah, I guess if I had to go through that so I could be better for you or get you through that thing, then yeah, I guess the negative was worth it. Or,
Yeah.
so
But yeah, I think you used the word self-serving earlier. So we don't want to do that because that doesn't serve us. It might serve someone else. And yeah, we could have a whole nother 4 episodes of this podcast just talking about the stuff that we've been through, you
mm,
know, between our children or our children that aren't here, or,
hmm,
or all of those things. I mean, but all things work together. And the
hmm,
problem is we don't want all. We want good things to work together for good.
right.
And so, yeah.
Yes, yes.
So,
We don't
so,
want
so
the bad.
that,
We only want the good.
right. So I preached a sermon, I don't know, almost a year ago, and I was talking about blessings. And I said, what are blessings? And everybody was like, good stuff. I was like, but that's the problem. Like
Mm,
we don't see, there's that song, Blessings. What if blessings come through raindrops? What if like
come through
we don't
tears.
ever, yeah, and we don't ever front load that, like say, man, this situation is not very good. This is garbage. This is what am I about to learn?
Right.
Like we don't get excited in that, that old adage in sports, either you win or you learn, you know,
Mm, hmm.
which could be true if you let it.
Yes,
And I
but you
think,
have to be open to the learning process.
yeah, you gotta be. And
Yeah.
as leaders, what a wasted position if you're
Mm,
not. What a wasted position if you're not.
yeah.
And you said earlier, I stopped counting at about 10,000 students, you
Yeah.
know, and that's not including their families.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah. Because
so when
Joe Lane, you are prolific. Like when I say superpower, you are, yeah, I don't know somebody personally with the reach that, like, because you will know a student who's just a general student, never gets in trouble, doesn't have to see you in the office, but you'll have a connection with that student, and then that connection leads to a connection with their parents. Then you see them at Myers, they talk to you about something, comes up, and now you're doing ministry in the frozen food aisle because you see somebody everywhere you go.
Todd, I did 2 funerals this summer of students' parents who died.
Mm.
Neither of them, one of them's not even Christian at all. Matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
the mom died. The dad was like, don't you say any religious stuff at this funeral. Like, I mean, so it was an interesting journey about how I navigated that, which I wanted to honor what he was saying, but I had to be true to who I was. But
Right.
at any rate, and then the other one was a family that I'm friends with, but they've never been to New Life. They're not New Lifers. They're not people that go to our church. But those kids were like, we want Joe Lane to bury our dad.
Yeah. So I want the audience to think about that for a second. Think about a teacher or an administrator that you had as a kid.
We had a teacher that died 2 years ago. I did her funeral too.
Yeah. And you want somebody that you worked with to do the funeral. That's leadership.
And that's what I hope. I mean, like, that I want you to feel that way about me, whether I do your funeral or not, but I want you to feel that way about me because you know that I care that much about you.
Right. And that is something that you do exceedingly well.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to say for the record, I do it because I do care. Like, you know, and I say that because there, leadership can be manipulative too. Mm-hmm. So we can play that part so that we get what we want out of people.
Yes, but anybody who knows you knows that you are authentic. I mean, how many nicknames do you have for all of the students? You don't ever call a kid by their real name. You've got nicknames for all of them.
We've shifted. I'm doing handshakes now.
Oh man, I couldn't do that. Oh man.
So I have about 200.
Yeah.
Last time I thought, but here's the cool thing. Every single handshake has a purpose, right? Mm-hmm. So I made up a new one today with this little girl. She was she walked into school and she like jumped and like went like this. So like that's part of our handshake now. It's just goofy, but every single handshake has a purpose, which is telling every single one of those kids you mean something to me.
Yes.
Like yes. You're important enough for me to have an individual handshake with you.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, like there's value.
Yeah. And I think that if I could give the audience or the people watching this, one of the things that, speaking of leadership, one of the greatest things that I learned from you is what you said early on. Just be real with the kids. Just have that honest conversation. And like, I've done that before where I've sat a kid down, got them off private. They'll be like, hey, look, I know your mom and dad are splitting up right now. And that sucks. Absolutely sucks. But life isn't going to stop. When you're an adult, it's still going to keep going. So how can I support you in this to keep you going forward through suck? Because it's not going to stop.
That's it. And I think not just with kids, but with adults. I had one of my students who TJ, shout out to you, who like he's 30 something now, right? Mm-hmm. I had him at OV. So
way back.
And yeah, he was like, man, Mr. Lane, he sent me a message on Facebook. He was like, I've been looking for you. Blah, 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 blah. I just wanted you to know when I was 12 years old, in those days, you were driving me home, dropping me off at my house, sitting in the driveway, talking to me, and I didn't listen. I'm 6 years clean and sober now, and yada, 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 my kids. And lo and behold, his daughter actually goes to the school I'm at right now.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I was doing pictures for school pictures, right? Because I work for that company.
Yeah.
And which is a really cool thing. Like, I get to work that day and take all these kids' pictures and be in front of every single kid and make them smile. And I have parents who are like, you're taking my kid's picture from kindergarten until they graduate. Yeah. But I saw her last name. I was like, hey, who's your dad? And she was like, Travis. And I was like, oh my gosh, girl, come here. Took a selfie with her and I sent it to her dad. And all he wrote back was like, I know she's in good hands.
Yeah.
Those moments, man, those moments are worth it.
Yeah, I did a video probably this summer. One of my former students, if you remember, one of my former students' parent was involved in a homicide and went to jail for the rest of his life.
I think I do.
When I was a 6th grade teacher. and there was two brothers, and I reconnected with that student probably a year ago. We went out to dinner, and like just kind of like you and I just picked up where we left off, and
Yeah.
we're sitting in a restaurant, and he's telling me, stories about his life, and he's crying in the restaurant. No shame. It's just
Right.
me and
Because
him,
he's with
and
you.
yeah, yeah,
Because he's with
and
you. Being
amazing.
somebody, I had a mom say to me the other day, she was like, and I do know a lot of kids, but I have tiers of kids. Like there's kids, I know who they are. I know I have no idea what their name is. Like, I mean, our school district is, first of all, our school district has 3,600 students, and I'm the only school employee that every student knows.
Right.
But this mom was like, "Hey, Joe, I want to talk to you. My son, I was talking to him the other day, high school student. She goes, he said, you're his safe person. And I'm like, oh, who's your son? Like, I had no idea.
Right.
And even when I looked him up, I'm like, I don't know this kid like that. But she was like, yeah, last year something happened and you were involved. And he just said, you're his guy.
Which, man, right there, that piece right there, you never know as a leader when you're going to do that thing for that person that will change their life.
You sure don't. You sure don't. Yeah. I mean, Tom Jones never expected for us to be where we are. He just did what he was supposed to do. Like, he never expected us to be in this situation. I talked to Sarah Buddy, one of my students today. I had her when she was a sixth grader at Orchard View, and she's 32 now, and her dad died like 8 years ago, I think. I'm her dad now. I could, that whole class, I could talk about Sarah and Jessica and all those Amanda, that whole group of kids, but we don't ever know.
Right.
We don't ever know, but we've got to be, as leaders, we've got to be on the ready.
Mm-hmm.
We got to be on the ready, because that's what leadership calls us to.
Yes. Yeah. Well, hey, I'm looking at the clock, and I know you have a 6 o'clock coming up right now. So
yeah, they're eating downstairs.
They're eating. Oh, look at, man, I know. What do they got? Any peach cobbler?
I don't. You lost that day, by the way.
I did lose, man.
Yeah. So talk about connections and leadership. So that's one of the things I do now. Like, because we don't have, like, our church is weird. We don't have a children's church, right? Because this weird pastor doesn't believe in it in some regards. No, that's not totally true. But we don't have children's church. So we'll have, like, teenagers show up, right? And so I'm like, all right, I got to keep this kid engaged. I'm going to preach for a long time. Got to keep him engaged. And so I'll walk up to him before church, and I'll do that, Todd. I'll be like, hey,
give me a word.
Give me a word. And they're like, huh? Like, any word. And I'm going to use it in my sermon today. And you should see them light up like,
Yep.
I remember, I'd be like, that's it. I'm like, that's easy or whatever. And I'll just throw that out there. But then, the whole context is they're listening to the whole sermon.
Yes.
And then I'll use the word, look at them and kind of wink or whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's, I'll either do that or I'll say, listen, if you don't enjoy the sermon today, I'll give you $5 at the end of church. And what's funny is, come on, I've been waiting for every teen to be like, nope, didn't enjoy it. Give me my money. Whether they did or not, I've never had a kid say that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just for context, that was a challenge that Joe and I did. And that was the word that I chose, was peach cobbler. And he was getting to the end of his sermon. I'm like, he ain't going to do it. He ain't going to do it. He doesn't have it. And he said something. And
I remember
that. Well, something like, the word of God is good in your mouth, like peach cobbler. And you just looked at me.
So I remember, because peach cobbler is my favorite dessert.
Yeah.
So when you said it, I was like, bro, slam dunk. And I said, I love Jesus. I love him. I love peach cobbler.
Yeah.
But I love Jesus more. Like, I remember, because I was like, come on.
Yes. Yeah. And I just was like, oh my gosh, he beat me. You beat me in everything, but whatever.
Man, I've loved our relationship. I mean, and again, like, it goes back to that level of growth. I mean, I remember, your first sermon, like digging in. Well, my father-in-law was the one that was.
Yes, Reverend Barnes. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But even putting, like I loved you enough to put you in a very tough situation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because
when you told me he was going to be there, I was like, oh no. all 7'3" of him. Oh my
Yeah, bro.
gosh.
Hey,
Yeah.
imagine marrying his only daughter.
I
Uh, but like those types of things, those types of growth edges, and knowing, like also knowing the potential of the people that you're leading, and
yes.
saying, I know I can put you in this situation, and you're gonna thrive, you're gonna survive, you're gonna grow. The pastor that I served for in Lansing, it was a female pastor at the Lutheran church. She used to come in about every 3 or 4 months. Like she would walk up and say, "Oh, I changed the hymn of the day today," like right before church. And I didn't play piano. Like I don't read piano music to play it that way, right? And I'm like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be a hymn I didn't know. So I'd have to like run into the church, and in like 10 minutes, I'd have to learn a song, which
Right.
is not in my wheelhouse. And so finally we had a blowout. I'm like, you got to quit doing this. And she looked at me, she goes, Joe, you don't realize how much better you perform under stress.
And
So
now,
she
how
had
many
been
songs do you know?
oh my gosh, exactly. Like, and all of that, all things work together for good.
Yes.
All of that has driven me to be better. My other pastor, like my home pastor, he used to do that to me. He was notorious for me coming into Bible study. Bible study started at 7. I'd get there at 6:30. He'd be like, "Yeah, son, I don't feel very good. I'm going home. You have to teach tonight," and leave. I'm like, "What?" You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
The other pastor, when I was here, Pastor Poole, who passed away too. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah. He would he started doing this thing where he was like, all right, you're preaching on Sunday morning, but we're also going to have an evening service where people get to ask you questions about your sermon. I'm like, nah, bro, I planned a sermon for people to listen to, not for people to ask me questions about the parts of the text that I don't know. Right. And man, my level of study changed. And my level of growth changed. And that now we do that at church on Sundays. Like after my sermon, I'm like, so what do you think? What questions do you have? And we have about 15 minutes where people like can legitimately ask me whatever they want.
Wow. Yeah, Pastors of America. Let's see where that goes.
Bro. People ain't ready for that.
Pastors aren't ready for that. You know what? Congregations aren't ready for that either. But we need to be. We need to be ready.
Yeah, we could talk a lot about that because
that's part 2.
Yeah, because really because that's about culture, right? Because what we've done now is we've developed a culture of transparency where people are like, so I'm struggling with what this passage said to me about that was
right
on microphone in front of the World Wide Web.
Right. And that takes a level of confidence, but it also takes a leader who is willing to go to that place first, put themselves in that hard position so that their people that they are leading will then go to that place of growth as well so that they can grow.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how they felt the first time they heard me say, I don't know. I was preaching about 3 months ago or whatever. I throw those numbers out. I don't know, when, but I said, hey, I'm preaching this text, but verse 7, I don't know what it means. So when we get there, I'm struggling with it still. So just so you know, contextually, I don't have this all together, but this is our text because we use the lectionary still. And this is what's driving us, but I'm still struggling with this. I do not know. Which is different than me. I could have preached the whole sermon and just not dealt with that section. But
which is what most preachers will do.
Sure. And I understand that particular Sunday, I felt like the vulnerability was actually the best investment.
Yeah. Because you are rightly dividing the word, but you are also leading people.
Yeah. Well, rightly dividing the word means don't wrongly divide the word.
Right. So sometimes I don't know is better.
Yes, sir. Like I'm about to dig into this. Nah, bro.
Yeah, because you're held doubly accountable.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I tell people, so that whole casket, close to the casket in the crib, when I die, I want people to say he strove to do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. That's it. That's it. That's it. I will lead well. I'll be a good husband. I'll be a good dad. I'll be a good principal. I'll be a good community guy if I seek to do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. everything else would fall into place. I didn't even have to worry about the other stuff.
Right. Yep.
I had a guy tell me one time, I'm just going to use this because I want to shout you out. And I use this quote all the time. If God called you to it, there's no risk involved. I use that all the time, Todd Hendricks.
Where'd you get that?
Yeah, man, you were speaking a word that day, Jack. I was like, whew. And I still give you credit. Like, I don't even take it as my own anymore. I'm like, Todd said that time. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to say that to myself a few times.
For sure.
Because it's like, man, you know you're supposed to do something, and then it's like, fear.
Well, so let's put that in context of leadership, right? So if that's true, then when I am taking a risk to be vulnerable, transparent, um, willing to tell my folks that I don't know or that they know better than me or that I need input or whatever, there's no risk involved. If that's really what I'm called to,
Right. Right.
you know, and I've just watched it. I have watched it pay dividends. Like I
Yeah.
had a teacher the other day. This is my last teacher story. I said, hey man, we were talking, and this is just general school talk. So we weren't even in a negative space. I went up to him. I said, can I ask you a question? I said, if I asked you to do something that was outside of the scope of your job responsibility, would you do it? And this was actually at a building that I'm not at very often.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me, he goes, for you, Joe? Yes. And walked away.
Relationship.
And I was talking with another administrator, said that part right there.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the yes, it's the for you.
Yes.
Comma. And when we work, so I work in the schools not because I have to. I work in the schools because I want to. And to be honest, I didn't put him in that leadership question you asked me at the beginning, which I think is the only question you actually got to ask me. But Steve Edwards, our superintendent, Steve Edwards. I work at the school district because I love that man and I respect him so much that he's asked me to come back, and I made time, I made room in my schedule for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at the school more than I'm at the church.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it's like he's asking me to, and I respect him as a leader so much. I hate it, matter of fact, because I know I'm gonna say yes to him whenever he asks me to do something.
Yeah. But then he helped you move.
He did.
I remember that.
Yeah, and he's a leader that helped.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Steve has stepped into my life in some of the toughest times.
Yeah. Well, look, I know your people are eating, and you can probably smell what they're cooking. And what, they got anything good down there?
I don't know. Usually it's like a full meal. The guy who normally cooks didn't cook today. Somebody else was bringing it. There was some text thread, but no, it's normally like legit, like not snacks. They're down there with like tacos and burritos and
in your favorite chicken.
Yeah. It makes it, man. Yeah, they be throwing down there. So
yeah.
It was a cool. This men's ministry. There's some guys here from Grand Rapids. They drive in every Wednesday. So it's cool. It's again leadership. I don't teach them. I'm just part of it. I go down and Robbie teaches and I'm a student. I sit in and I'm asking questions, and they know if I ask a question, I'm not trying to be like, oh, let me be deep and ask a question.
Right.
No, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you for, wow, this was a long time, but this was good because it went fast and it was fun.
Yeah. Man. I appreciate you asking me and even thinking enough of me to be on here, and hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. So just so you know, what's going to happen is I'm going to edit this. I'm going to put it on YouTube. I'm going to put it on Facebook and stuff. And then I'm going to tag you in it. So you'll get it. You can do whatever you want with it.
Perfect.
And then
I'll share it and I'll try to get people to subscribe,
Yeah. All your students like and subscribe. Mr. Hendricks is cool, man.
Hey, listen, it's so funny. Kids are like, Mr. Lane, I saw your TikTok. I'm like, did you follow me?
Yeah.
No. What are you talking about? You didn't follow me. Yeah. All right. I'll go follow you, Mr. Lane.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, Joe. Thank you so much. Go enjoy your dinner and I appreciate you, man.
Tell the fam I said, hey.
All right. Same to you.
All right. Well,
I'm Todd, and my mission is to equip current and aspiring leaders with the tools, insights, and strategies they need to excel in their roles. Through personalized coaching, cutting-edge leadership development, and tailored consultation services, I help leaders cultivate respect, resilience, and excellence, enabling them to make lasting impacts on their businesses and organizations. If you or someone you know could benefit from this type of growth in their life, let's connect and have a conversation and see if I can help.